Thank you, Robert. It's a great pleasure to be with you and to make this short presentation today, particularly since I was unable to be at the meeting in Amsterdam last year as a result of having a serious bout of flu. What I've been asked to do today is to give a sense of some of the main issues that were discussed at the Cochrane Colloquium in Edinburgh in September from a patient's or consumer's perspective. I was particularly fortunate in being offered a consumer stipend by Cochrane, having previously been involved in meetings for the planning of the colloquium and in reviewing about 20 presentation proposals from a consumer perspective. Over 4 days, nearly 1,300 delegates from around the world met in a complex programme of keynotes, special sessions, workshops and other oral sessions. And as a consumer, I managed to find something of interest in every one of these slots. There were at least 50 consumer representatives, and Cochrane made certain that we were able to meet up and network over the 3 days. Some, like me, were what I would call a Cochrane Colloquium virgin. I'd never been to a colloquium before, whilst others had attended over many years from across the world and from across a range of health specialisms. It was also good for me to catch up with Bob and Robert, Laura and others from the Cochrane Skin Group and to have some meals with them. So why the emphasis on patients? Well, we heard yesterday from Heather some thoughts, and in a sense, I think there's much of a synergy between some of the things I want to say today and what she was saying. But to put it simply, the patients are the end beneficiaries of healthcare research. And I would hope that none of you here today undertakes your research just to pursue a personal interest in isolation from the real world. Throughout the colloquiums, patient values and patient expectations. Oh, and I should say at this point that all the cartoons I'm using today were drawn by Tom Bailey, the artist in residence at the colloquium, and I'm using them with the permission of Cochrane UK. There was a general stress on the need for patients to have an opportunity to influence research, as, for example, in the UK, the James Lind Alliance requires patient input to their priority-setting partnerships with research establishments such as the Centre for Evidence-Based Dermatology. It was regularly suggested throughout the colloquium that consumer interests to health research and consumer inputs should run from the initial idea for a research programme through all the stages to publication, to test whether the programme continues to be meeting an established need. A number of sessions were offered to consumer representatives by Richard Morley of Cochrane UK and some of his colleagues, so that we were familiar with some of the terminology and some of the processes that you as researchers are involved in. But fortunately didn't go into some of the statistical information and presentations that we saw from Emily before coffee. But those speakers stressed the need for patient input from the first base, helping frame research questions on the knowledge of what your patient wants to know. One outcome should be helping the clinician to see the patient differently. And a representative of the BMJ, as I understood it, explained that the BMJ papers are now published with a patient review, and since 2014 has introduced mandatory reporting of patient and public involvement in research projects. Now let me turn to some, for me, of the most memorable sessions of the colloquium. One of the opening keynote speakers was a feisty, energetic female GP from Glasgow, Margaret McCartney. And Margaret's patch in Glasgow is in one of the more heavily deprived urban areas. She came across as very passionate about good healthcare for her population, and then explored some of her recurrent concerns about the relationship between evidence-based research, personal health care, and government health policy. These concerns included such questions as, why do we so often ignore the evidence of what healthcare interventions work and what don't? Who and where are the independent sources of healthcare information? Why are pharmaceutical companies not legally compelled to publish all their clinical trial data? Are the results of clinical trials fairly reported in the popular media? And can we trust government to make health service policy based on best evidence? Or are they too much influenced by finance? And she cited there the appointment of Mark Hancock, MP in Westminster, as the Secretary of State for Health in the UK government, within a day or so of his appointment saying that he was recommending that patients should subscribe to a named private healthcare virtual platform. She questioned whether that was a wise thing for a Secretary of State to advise. And then she used as an example of the way in which the media, popular media, can twist healthcare advice by a leaflet that her teenage son had taken home from school about self-examination for testicular cancer. It included the suggestion that you might wish to ask a friend to help with the examination. And believe me, I know that that is true because it's on the ITV.com platform, based on the programme, and Kim and Joe and others from the UK will recognise the name, presented by Lorraine Kelly. And it included the suggestion that you might want to ask a friend to help with the examination, to which the son asked the obvious question, Mum, does that not mean that my girlfriends can help me feel them? The second potentially controversial speaker was a lady called Jennifer Johansson from Canada. She is a long-term patient advocate herself, but she set out to question whether patient engagement is actually all it sets out to be. And you can remember just yesterday afternoon the debate about whether too many patient representatives are, like many of us, white, middle class, and articulate. She noted the growing demand for patient involvement, but sought to distinguish between activism and engagement. Some so-called patient or consumer advocates get involved because they have personal access to provide. Do they have a particular case they want to have listened to and overrule others in the discussion? Whereas constructive, active involvement in research programs is to the mutual benefit of all parties, rather than something that antagonises them. She called for skill building and for greater diversity in membership of patient groups. And therefore, for me, it was good to listen to Heather yesterday afternoon. The problem comes when one group, whether gender, ethnic, social class, educational attainment, whatever, is joined by people who don't fit in with them. We don't want her on our patient group. But she noted the irony of her debunking the role of patient engagement whilst being a long-term patient participation herself. Now, this session that I've illustrated here offered a complete contrast to anything else at the colloquium. It was a joint presentation by a lady called Ruth Elwood Martin, a former prison governor from Canada, and a former inmate of her prison, Mo Brzezinski. Together they outlined an experiment in one women's prison, where there was a disproportionate level of First Nationals among the offenders. First Nationals here meaning Canadian Red Indians, I suppose they would have been called previously. There was widespread drug dependency, a record of reoffending after release, and within the prison service, an uncaring regime. But Ruth, as governor, called together an open meeting to which all prisoners and staff were invited and sought to find ways of improving the health of prisoners, to develop their life skills and prepare the inmates for re-entry into society. And she was surprised when everyone wanted to attend the meeting, from which a range of ideas were generated, such as, why can't we grow our own fresh vegetables? Or, where can I get help on release? The prison authorities proved they were listening, set up a farm where the inmates were growing their vegetables, and new programs, including mutual support after release, leading to less reoffending. This proved to the authorities that research as knowledge is super powerful. The inmates and staff alike value the I actually matter outcomes of the initiative. And Mo, the former prisoner in particular, gave a truly heartfelt presentation, not without a few hesitations and a few tears, but got a standing ovation for her courage at the end, the only standing ovation of the colloquium. And then, moving to another part of the world, to Kenya in Africa, there was a moving presentation by a lady called Dorothy Lodge, a researcher. Her research related to services and support for mothers of premature babies, mainly from the shanty towns around Nairobi. To set the scene, Dorothy explained that in Kenya, one nurse is normally required to care for 15 to 20 premature babies. This required mothers to assist by providing high levels of care as well, travelling long distances to help care for their babies while they're still in hospital. The research programme sought to learn from mothers' first voices, collecting experienced narratives in the Kenyan context. It encouraged mothers of premature babies who had now left the hospital to offer support and advice in the shanties to other mothers who were going through the same experiences themselves. The experiment, which was illustrated by a short film, The Power of Videos, was proving critical in helping mothers to help themselves, their babies, and the hard-pressed nursing staff. And in my view, whereas the prison example could potentially be tailored for other societies keen to improve the circumstances of inmates and staff alike, Dorothy's presentation seemed to be much more specific to the poor and marginalised in emerging economies, where poverty is more rife than many of us would care to imagine. And then one of the keynote speeches at the end of the conference was given by Dr. Graham Smith, the Deputy Chief Medical Officer for Scotland. He spoke about a new approach to healthcare that was launched in Scotland in 2017, called realistic medicine. The aim of this new approach is to put the person receiving health and social care at the centre of decision making, and creates a personalised approach to their care. Its aim of reducing harm and waste and simplifying machines are the simpler and safer options. It's patient-focused and not finance-driven, although in my locality where I live in Scotland, I am aware that by adopting this approach, there is a saving of about £3 million